This is the Building Energy Performance Standard Task Force meeting for November 17th, 2020, starting at 2:30. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on our website. I'm going to do a quick tour of Blue Jeans because I do see some new names in the list today, so you might not be familiar with Blue Jeans. All of your controls are at the top. The very first button is your video screen or your video. The very next one is where you can turn your microphone on and off. So that's a good button to know so that you can mute yourself throughout the meeting. Or as the facilitator, if we have a lot of background noise, I can actually mute you, but that doesn't mean that you can't unmute yourself and then talk or ask a question. The very next button, it looks like a little monitor, is how to share your screen, and I should be the only one doing that. And the red button is how you hang up and leave the meeting, so don't do that until the end. If you click on any of the buttons on the right for people, chat, apps, or settings, it opens up a window on the right-hand side where you can control your chat. Make sure when you're in chat that you're sending it to everyone instead of doing a direct message so that everyone can see your questions. We usually have a pretty active chat box during these meetings, so feel free if you don't want to speak up out loud to go ahead and put something in the chat button. And if you click on settings and check the two buttons down at the bottom where it says fit video to view and always show video layout controls, it kind of makes your experience a little bit easier to control because you have access to everything and you can see the whole entire presentation screen. So if you have any problems with Blue Jeans during the meeting, please let me know. You can actually direct message me or put something in the chat and I'll see if we can't fix it during the meeting. So the meeting is being recorded and will be posted to our website afterwards. For questions and comments throughout the meeting, all attendees will control their own mute function, but I can mute you. Task force members can comment at any time. We usually have a pretty large number of people in this meeting, so we ask that non-task force members please use the chat box to request to talk, and then we will, unless there's just not a lot of activity going on at the time, you're welcome to speak up. So please use the chat box if you need to. For non-task force members, please use the chat box at this time to register your name, organization, and email to officially sign in. And we'll have Andrew go through a roll call with our task force members.
Thank you, Sharon. Been a while since we've had one of these. So standard thing, just say here present when I call your name. Katie Bergfeld.
Here.
Patty Boyd.
Oh, she's not going to be here today.
Oh,
she told me that.
But we have Crystal and Ted on the line, I see, so we'll just Jen Croft. Marshall Dewar-Balkin.
He's going to be out today.
Wendell Felder. Is anyone from DCRA on the line? Sound like it. Dave Good.
Present.
You. Max Greninger.
Here.
Adrian Gross. Rush Mahala. Jessica Jones.
Here.
Monica Landrinow.
She's out today.
Cliff Majerzik.
Here.
Todd Nedwick. Matt Prasky.
Here.
Joe Riley. Jay Wilson.
I'm here.
So I don't think we have a quorum.
We are so close, though. So I'm going to pose a question to Matt and to the task force members. Today the topics are very more conversational rather than us voting on a particular thing or something like that. Would everybody be okay with us moving forward with the task force meeting as long as we don't make any formal motions or voting or anything like that?
Sharon, this is Jay. Could you review the agenda maybe?
Oh, sure. Let me do that next. So we're going to do a feedback session with DCSEU. We are going to give you all an update on the extended deep retrofit pathways with some of the recommendations coming from the campus subcommittee. And then we're going to give an update on the rules timeline.
Thanks. I think it's cool to move forward. The session will be recorded so the rest of the members can listen in later.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, and since we're not voting on anything, it doesn't seem like it would affect the meeting.
Okay. Then I will just out loud acknowledge that we don't have a quorum, but we feel that we can move forward with the meeting and everybody can catch up as needed, and we'll go from there. Okay. So we are going to dive in right to our feedback session with DCSEU, and I wanted to kind of acknowledge that we have like a beautiful circle of all of these different partners, and this slide, this graphic, I actually stole from the Building Innovation Hub's website because I thought it was such an awesome graphic. We did a feedback session with the DC Green Bank back in July, I believe. We did one with the Building Innovation Hub in June or July. Department of Energy and Environment, we're kind of always online. And then we have DCRA works with us on the permitting processes, which I don't think we'll do an actual feedback session, but we are talking to them continuously behind the scenes. So today we're going to dig in to DC Sustainable Energy Utility, and I am going to turn it over to Ted and Crystal, and you all just let me know when you want me to advance the slides.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Ted Trabue. I want to make sure that you can hear me. This is my first time using Blue Jeans.
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
Okay, great. Crystal McDonald has joined us. Crystal is our Director of Account Management. I know some of you, and for those of you who are not familiar with me, my name is Ted Trabue, and for the past just a little over 9 years, I've been the director of the DC Sustainable Energy Utility. We have been around for, in March, it'll be about 10 years. So I was hired as the first managing director in October of 2011. And I want to thank you very much for having this session this afternoon so that we can give you a little bit of a deep dive on our background, what we do, and some of the offerings that we have that will help the members of the built environment here comply with BEPS and to upgrade their buildings when that time arises. How would you like to proceed today? Did you want me to? We have a set of slides. I think they're about 7 or 8 slides. It's not too deep. I'm going to do the first couple, and then I'm going to turn it over to Crystal. But if you are ready to proceed, you can move forward with the first slide, and we can get going. I'm happy at any time during the presentation to take questions, so just please ask them out loud. I don't see the chat at the moment. Is it up and active?
Yeah, if you click on chat in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, it should open the window. I think you all have some questions at the end, and it'll make a little bit more sense for us to get through the slides so that everybody understands what's being offered,
Okay.
And then we can have a good conversation about it.
Okay, good. I see the chat now. That's good. Fine. Okay. Thanks.
I think he accidentally hung up and left the meeting. Hit the red button instead. Crystal, do you want to?
Sure. Happy to pick up until Ted gets back. We were just going to do a refresher of who we are, the DC Sustainable Energy Utility, and just to remind everyone of our goals, and then move on.
All right. I'm sorry.
Areas. Okay.
I hit the wrong button.
That's what we thought.
I'm back.
We'll let you take over.
One of the wonderful things about working at home. Okay, Chris, are we still on the first slide?
Yeah,
We are.
yeah. Just yep.
Okay. Um, as I said, we'll do a refresher about the DCSEU. I'll go over our goals, talk a little bit about some of our programs, and then we can talk about our efforts to support benchmarking. Clearly, Patty Boyd, who is a member of your task force, is our primary liaison to this group. And I'm sorry Patty couldn't be here today. You know, she's just such a wonderful person and a font of knowledge. But she, you know, had to take some personal time off today. And then, you know, the third point here, would love to get any feedback from the committee that you might have. Okay, we can go into the next slide. The DCSEU, and please pardon me for those of you who are intimately familiar with this, because I know a number of you who either work over at DOEE or some of the other organizations where we work. You've heard me say this many times before, but for those of you who may not have, I will kind of start from the beginning. The DCSEU was established through the passage of the Clean and Affordable Energy Act of 2008. Mary Chey authored that legislation along with Cliff Majerzik, who I see sitting over there. Cliff, give us a wave. Cliff was one of the real big movers and shakers helping to draft that legislation, which called for a third-party implementer, an independent organization, to be selected through a competitive procurement process to run the city's energy efficiency and some of the city's renewable energy programs. The initial solicitation was put on the street in about 2010, you know, around a decade ago. And late in 2010, the DC Sustainable Energy Utility was selected, and I should say the DC Sustainable Energy Utility. The DC Sustainable Energy Utility is a division of VEIC, formerly known as Vermont Energy Investment Corporation. Vermont Energy Investment Corporation, VEIC, is a 501c3 nonprofit that has been operating here in the United States for almost 35 years, helping to design, initially working on the designing of energy efficiency and renewable energy programs. We work in about 38 states here in the United States. And then, starting in 2000, the company started actually designing and also running energy efficiency and renewable energy programs throughout the United States. The initial program was a statewide program in Vermont. One of the next programs was a program in the state of Ohio, where we operate energy efficiency services on a county-by-county opt-in basis. We're a big sub to set up the renewable energy programs in New Jersey. Our office here in the District of Columbia opened in March of 2011. We also have an office in Wisconsin where we help run some of the energy efficiency programs out there. We just sent a staffer out to Hawaii. Believe me, there was a robust competition to see who would get selected to be our staff person on the ground in Hawaii as we help Hawaii set up its energy efficiency programs. And in fact, one of the ladies who worked with Crystal and our account management team has now relocated to Hawaii and is helping work those services in Hawaii. But it says we provide services and consultative services in about 30, and we've done so in about 38 states throughout this country, many provinces up in Canada, and in some European countries as well. Getting back to our local situation, though, the DCSEU was set up, as I said, about 10 years ago with a very, very, what I would call one of the most unique set of goals of any energy efficiency program in the country. We have goals, as you can see on the screen here, that are related to saving electricity here in the District of Columbia. Our goal is about 1% a year. Natural gas as well. We have a very healthy natural gas savings goal. We also have a goal that we track very, very carefully down to the hour worked for creating green jobs for district residents. Before I joined the DCSEU, Cliff and I did a project that talked about the green collar jobs. What we took a look at, what sort of jobs might be available in this new green economy. This, Cliff, remind me of the dates. This probably goes back to 2007, 2008, when we were really looking at this emerging green economy, and we did a big study around green jobs back then. Green jobs are a very important component of the work that we do. We have a low income spending goal, which is about 20% of our annual budget. I'll get into our budget in a second. In addition to the low income spending goal, we have a low income savings goal. So with that spend, which is about 20% of our budget, we also have to achieve about 10% of our overall savings in the low income community. And we call the low income community residents who are earning 80% or less of area median income. In addition to that, we service some facilities like clinics and shelters that are also providing services to our income qualified community. So we do expand our work a little bit beyond just residential multifamily housing. We have a renewable energy goal that I will discuss in a couple of different ways in a moment. And then we have a local, what I call local economic development, certified business enterprises. To be more specific, 35% of our contractable dollars must be spent with certified business enterprises. Our goal for CBE spending last year was about $7 million. Our tally at the end of the year was a little over $11 million that we spent with certified business enterprises here at the District of Columbia. Our budget is derived from two sources primarily. The first is the Sustainable Energy Trust Fund, which is a public benefit surcharge that is on all ratepayers' electric and natural gas bills. And recently, with the passage of the Clean Energy Omnibus legislation, that surcharge is also applied to customers who are using oil to heat their homes. Additionally, we have about so that the Sustainable Energy Trust Fund funds us with about $20 million a year. The Renewable Energy Development Fund, which is a fund that is used exclusively for supporting solar systems here in the District of Columbia, also gives us about $10 million a year. So our overall budget is about $30 million a year. We do have an additional project that we're doing currently for Washington Gas that's about a $4 million project. So between averaging FY 20 and 21, we'll spend about $32 to $34 million a year annually between those two funds and the additional work that we're doing on behalf of Washington Gas. The funds are collected by the Department of Energy and Environment. We are a contractor to the Department of Energy and Environment. We have a 5-year contract with DOEE. The goals that you see here on this page are what we call, this is a performance-based contract. So there are financial incentives or penalties for hitting or missing the goals that you see established on this page. And there are a few goals that we have in addition to these as well, but it is one of the most dynamic, one of the most complex energy efficiency contracts in the country. We are, as I said, now in the 5th year of implementation of the current contract that we have, with the thought of then moving into a new contract with the Department of Energy and Environment that would commence in fiscal year 22. I think one of the most exciting elements of that contract is that we might take some of these goals and shift them around a little bit and move to a greenhouse gas reduction goal to be more in line with the District of Columbia's clean energy plans. And so that's something that we are currently in discussion with DOEE and many other stakeholders, some of you who have probably been close to some of those discussions, to talk about how we line our programs up with greenhouse gas reductions, which we've been tracking, but which isn't a performance incentive right now for which we receive any financial reward. But we'll probably start doing that in FY22. If we turn the page to the next slide, we can talk about some of the programs that we run. On the residential level, we have what we call an efficient products program. Many of you might be familiar with LED lighting. LED lighting is one of the larger projects or programs that we run. We work with many retailers here in the District of Columbia to buy down the cost of the high efficiency lighting. You might see them in Safeway, Giant, Costco, Bed Bath & Beyond, Home Depot, any of those, the major big box stores here in the city. We work with them to use some of the incentive dollars that we have to lower the price of these products so that you can go in there as a DC resident and buy LED lighting for probably as low as about $1.47 a bulb at this point. We have a solar program for income qualified residents, which operates, I'll get to that third panel in a minute, but the solar program has been in operation now since 2012. We probably installed over 600 individual solar systems on residential homes over those years, probably going on 700 right now, significantly reducing the energy usage and therefore the bills of the customers within those income qualified homes. Let me go back up to efficient products for a minute, because I'm reminded of one of the things that we also incentivize are high efficient systems for air conditioning, heating systems, water heaters, humidifiers, many systems that you would use in your house that would consume either electricity or gas. If you go on our website, we probably have a Energy Star qualified measure that we could recommend for you, and then there are financial incentives, refrigerators, dryers, washing machines for the home, things of those that we incentivize those as well to help you buy down the cost of high efficient equipment. So we use some of our residential money for those. And then there are tips and tools on our website that are either low cost or no cost tips and tools to help people save energy around their homes. On the commercial side, and I know that that's near and dear to this group, we have rebates and incentives for small and large commercial projects. We have income qualified support, some of our larger buildings that we deal with, as I said, clinics and shelters. But the biggest piece for us, and I think of most interest to a lot of the commercial property owners here in the District of Columbia, is our technical assistants, what I call the smart people in the office, the engineers and account managers who actually go on site prior to COVID and after COVID is over with, go on site, and we're still working with building owners now, but remotely. Look at the equipment that's in the building, look at the conditions in the building, and recommend a set of measures that can significantly improve the energy efficiency and the operations in the building. We also provide training for building engineers. The building engineers come over to our facilities and get training. Sometimes we do online training. Crystal might mention that later on in her presentation. We've done online training over the summer to help train building engineers to actually operate the high efficiency equipment that is within their buildings. And so we're doing all of these efforts to help reduce energy, and we've done work with very, very large buildings, federal government office buildings, district government buildings, schools, hospitals, universities, hotels, the like. Crystal and her team, she has a set of account managers who have, I call verticals. Crystal will explain how they work in a minute, but they actually go out and work very closely with the owners of these different types of facilities, many of them very, very large facilities. And on the technical assistance side, we have about 8 engineers in our office here in DC. They're supported by about 50 more engineers at our headquarters up in Vermont. So if there are technical problems, we have a wealth of engineering services to draw from to help the building owners solve their energy problems and move forward with energy solutions. On the solar side, and this is a program that we started running, the Solar for All program, about 3 years ago with significant funding from the Department of Energy and Environment, as I said, about $10 million annually. We install approximately 100 solar systems on single-family homes, and then we help developers install community solar projects. Each year that we've been doing this, and now we're going into our 3rd year for the Solar for All program, the community solar projects, all of the output from those projects is given to the Department of Energy and Environment, and those credits are then given to income qualified customers to cut their energy bills by about 50%. As you know from legislation that Councilmember Che passed some years ago, the goal of the District of Columbia is to reduce the energy burden for 100,000 low-income residents. The energy systems that we are installing through the Solar for All program are cutting the energy burden for about 2,000 residents a year with the work that we're doing. So that is a large effort within our organization to do both the single-family homes and the larger community solar projects, some of the larger projects that you may have seen if you've been out driving around town. On Children's Hospital, we just recently installed a system that was over a megawatt in size. We do about 7 or 8 megawatts a year. I'm crossing my fingers in FY21, the current year. We've received a number of very competitive bids to install community solar projects. We believe that we may be able to install about 12 megawatts of capacity through the projects that we will fund this year.
Hey, Ted,
Finally,
this
let
is
me get into
Sharon.
this last piece before I turn it over to Crystal to
Yeah,
talk about
I
our
was-
workforce development program.
Yeah. Can we make it short? I want to make sure we have enough time for discussion.
Oh,
So I don't.
sure.
Yeah. So if
Um,
we do a very quick review of the last panel.
Absolutely. We
Awesome.
run a workforce development program. We have about 2 cohorts a year that take in externs. We pay the individuals for a 5-month externship where they actually work on site and then come back into our office 1 day a week for additional training. But the program has been nationally recognized. We were on a panel with ACEEE last week to talk about it. Our job placement rate is about 85%, moving people from unemployment, returning residents, et cetera, into careers. And so we're very, very proud of the workforce development program that we've been able to run and the amount of DC residents that we've been able to put into full-time employment after they go through our externships. I'm going to turn the balance of this over to Crystal. And Crystal, let's move through it quickly because I know the group has some questions for us. All right?
Sure. So thank you guys for allowing us to be here today. So just to quickly recount the support we offered in FY20, actually FY19 and 20, Ted did mention my team, who are the account managers covering each of the verticals in the district, the commercial verticals. You know, we have multifamily, both affordable and market rate. We have an account manager for that. Fed, the federal government, the district government and schools, universities, etc. And so when the Energy Star scores first went out, there were lots of questions from the commercial sector, and our account managers were right there to respond to their questions. And if they needed additional help, we referred them to the benchmarking hotline that's listed on the district's website. We also supported the Sustainable Energy Infrastructure Capacity Building and Pipeline Program, which essentially is a training program to establish, to extend capacity and grow capacity among our primarily certified business enterprises, the CBEs, but we also accommodated CBE eligible firms, and we had about 19 training opportunities. The market responded extremely well, and where we could, offer a repeat course, we did. And so we had over 100 individuals participating, on average about 3 courses each. So you were looking at course registrations of 350 plus. And then we did have CBEs who were coming from every ward of the city. So we had very good cross representation of the city. And then there were some additional folks, just a few additional folks from Maryland and Virginia who participated as well. And so each of the CBEs, we touched about 46 to 50 CBEs, and we had an additional 30 plus CBE eligible. They all participated in the training and responded very well through our satisfaction survey, so we could see how what the impact was, the most immediate impact was on this training program. And so hopefully we'll be extended another opportunity to offer this training to expand capacity in the district going forward. And the trainings that we offered included the benchmarking training as well as data verification trainings. And those sessions were well attended. All of our trainings are available on the website. The recordings of the sessions are there, and just let me know if you have any questions about that. And then, of course, we continue our support through Patty's participation on the task force, and then when appropriate, we participate in the general public meetings. I know I participated in one of the monthly general public meetings early on when they were first launched. And then going forward, we continue to support the High Performance Building Hub. Fortunately, we had a fellow who joined us over the summer and was able to contribute significantly by compiling all of the information necessary for DCSEU programs and the layout that was accommodated on the Hub's website. And then, of course, the DC Building Codes update and the building envelope commissioning resources that are available on our website as well. Next slide, please. So what we're looking at in FY20 is to continue that account management support. Hopefully we are extended additional funding to support the training program, the capacity building program. Of course, Patty is still a champion representing the DCSEU on the task force. And whenever Sharon calls or wherever we're needed for the monthly presentations, you just let us know, and we would definitely have representation to support that effort, because I know the outreach and education is a continuous task for BEPS. And then our pay for performance, we still offer that, which closely aligns with the BEPS and what it's trying to achieve. And so recently we just had a conversation with DC Green Bank so that we can equip our staff to about these collaborative partnerships and how the DC Green Bank and other resources in our I like to refer to it as a clean ecosystem, green ecosystem for the district, and how these resources can help our customers get their projects completed. And so we had a very good conversation with Jay and with Sandy on Monday with the team. And as a result of that, they are working on a one-pager for the team to use and to add to their toolkit when they're going forward to speak to customers. And then finally, the benchmarking efforts. We're looking at how to best support that segment that does not have like a sustainability director or a whole, conservation department within them. So we're looking at smaller businesses support and how we can develop outreach materials that will help them. And then, of course, we are continuing our partnership with the benchmarking team and how to, again, get the word out. I think that's the heaviest lift, is educating the public on what's to come and what to expect. And so we want to be very supportive in that effort going forward. And then the next slide, this is all about feedback. We're looking at how we can best support the task force going forward, and what is it that you think we can offer and that would be most useful going forward in this BEPS rollout. So those are the questions I will leave you with. You have our contact information. Of course, you can reach out to Patty, and then the rest of us will get the message. But with that, I'll just leave the floor with these questions.
So now we can open mic, put ideas in the chat box. Considering DCSU's role in the things that they offer now, what things do we think they could do to add to that list?
Hey, Crystal.
Yes.
This is Katie. Can you all talk about the Pay for Performance program that you piloted last year and how that's going to continue this year?
Sure. So with Pay for Performance, as many of you may know, that's a program that it's a multi-year program actually, because we have to baseline the buildings and then monitor their improvements over time. In some cases, I think we've gone back to look at them after 9 months, other cases a year or more. And we pay an incentive based on that incremental improvement over time, similar to the way BEPS will be operating and looking at Energy Star scores and so on. So that program is continuing, and it's most useful for some of our largest commercial customers, because of course you have to put in your energy management information systems, looking at your controls, and that's in addition to all of the other energy efficiency measures that might improve your building load over time.
Crystal, are the incentives are paid on a fiscal year basis, right? Like you get somebody in the program, do their baseline, and then it's the performance over like a 1-year period because your budgets are in a 1-year fiscal year, and then the incentives paid that way?
Well, historically with Pay for Performance, for example, some of those customers have rolled over a little more than a year because, we have been, we were on a 5-year contract. We are in the final year of our current contract, and we hope to be able to roll that over. But what we're telling our account managers, for example, while we continue to work with our customers, there are no guarantees on the funding level that will be available in FY22. We know what we can pay for FY21, but I'm not as sure as what will be available in FY22, just because our funding levels for each of the programs may be slightly adjusted year over year.
And let me add to what Crystal is saying. I think that in the early years of our programs, I would say FY11 through FY16, we were on a 1-year contract with the Department of Energy and Environment. So many of you might be familiar with some of the struggles that we had year over year in the early years where we could not make commitments for a subsequent fiscal year because we did not know that we were guaranteed a contract in that fiscal year. We applaud the Department of Energy and Environment for putting us on this 5-year contract. As Crystal said, we're in the 5th year of that contract now with the ability to enter another 5-year contract with DOEE. But that's given us the ability to look at projects that span 2-3 fiscal years, in fact, and engage with a customer, let's say in year 1 or 2 of our contract, but not pay them until the project is actually completed and commissioned, maybe in the 3rd, 4th, or 5th year of the contract. It's one of the great things that gives us some flexibility now versus in the old days, everything had to be kind of started and sewn up within a given fiscal year. And that's not the way that buildings operate their planning cycles and development cycles for major renovations within the buildings. And so I think it's one of those things that DOEE heard us and said, a longer term contract, which is standard in the industry, would be better for us here in the District of Columbia as well.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that context.
Yeah, I have further clarification on this program. So is there any sort of initial results that y'all can share with us from the first year of the program to talk about like whether it's been successful or not? Because I think the reason I'm asking about this program specifically, because I think that a lot of folks on the line would be very interested in it. And so I wanted to see, do you all have any sort of like preliminary results or like talk to the success of this year or any lessons learned or things like that?
Hey, Katie, we do have results, and it's not something I follow as closely as Patty, but I'm happy to get that information to share out with the group.
And Katie, are you specifically referring to the pay for performance program or the
Yeah.
commercial programs overall?
Well, I was talking about pay for performance specifically, because I
Okay.
just know that that's a program that a lot of folks on the line have asked about or talked about or are interested in, and I think that it, the structure of it would align well with BEPS.
Right.
Sure.
One of the open questions we're having right now, because of COVID, and clearly when we designed the pay for performance program, the thought was, you take a baseline in year one, you work with the particular building, maybe make some suggestions to them for systems within the building that could be improved, and then you come back, a year or so later and take a second baseline. The assumption, let me underline that word, was that you would have fairly similar use in year one as you would in year two. What we're realizing now because of the COVID environment is that energy use in the commercial sector is down by about 20%. The buildings aren't occupied. Some of them are completely shuttered. Hotel occupancy is way, way down. And so I think some of our underlying assumptions are clearly going to have to be, we're going to have to come to a realization of how we evaluate some of these buildings on the backside in consideration of COVID. And so, Katie, that's quite frankly an open question that we know we're going to have to wrestle with moving forward. But a lot of the building use it's not like, in FY19 and FY19 over 20, things were fairly similar. 21 going into 22 is going to be very different.
Yeah.
When we think about it, like our longer compliance cycles, because I think we're hoping that some of the things that have been happening, due to COVID kind of calm down, and that 4 or 5 years from now in like 2026 is going to be our performance period measurement for the end of this compliance cycle. So how do you see your role over time, like in just a kind of very generic commercial building owner kind of way? There's different cycles of things that are going to happen over that 6 years or 5 years. Where do you kind of see DCSEU's role? Is it just a little bit more one-off for very particular little things, or is it a little bit more strategic and long-term? I would love to get your input.
Crystal, do you want to start, or do you want me to?
I'm just going to ask if you want to take that, because as you know, emerging technologies, let's just take that. Things change over time, and then the market gets saturated, and codes change, let's say, for lighting. So we will have to turn our attention to what's going to be most impactful over time. And there's a whole team that evaluates that, the emerging technologies team, to look for what our path forward would be, say, years out. So that's where I know that's where we are. Unfortunately, my focus is really on the immediate with the account management team and what we can do now. But I know that there are strategic conversations that are going forward as we speak to incorporate things like, changes in technologies and so on.
Yeah, and I think a couple of the changes that we're looking at in our new contract, as I mentioned earlier, around greenhouse gases. Some of the technologies that we're looking at, or the measures that we're looking to support, many of them might deal with refrigeration and moving to more efficient or moving to natural refrigerants versus those that are emitting tons of greenhouse gases right now. The city also wants us to look at decarbonization in terms of moving buildings off of natural gas systems to heat pumps. These are some of the things we'll be looking to support in the future as well. But I think as Crystal mentioned, being able to take a longer term horizon as we look at the built environment, looking at these buildings, and designing efficiency programs. I'm seeing this note in the chat about envelope sealing and things like this. I think that these will be very important as we do custom analyses, building by building.
Right.
The air sealing is one of the most difficult ones to do, quite frankly, in terms of our engineers and working with the custom analysis, because oftentimes you can't know the results of that work until after the building, after the work has been complete and the building has then been recommissioned. So, but yes, these are some of the things that we clearly want to help our large and medium-sized building owners with as we move forward.
Yeah, and Christian, right now our custom program is the method to do the most comprehensive analysis on like a whole building retrofit opportunity, and so right now that's probably the best that we have. But again, these things are constantly evaluated, and the best path forward.
Ted and Crystal, thanks for the detailed overview. This is Matt Prasky with Wash REIT, and I'm formally representing Marguerite Multifamily on the task force, though we own a few other property types. I think one quick question and maybe one longer. First, is there any discussion now around for DCSU to provide any different level of resources or incentive for buildings that fall below the BEPS compliance versus those that are above, or essentially the buildings already in compliance versus those that are not and need to implement things? Any difference in sort of incentives that would be provided to them, or all buildings pursuing efficiency are treated equally?
Matt, the short answer to that is any building coming to us, whether they are, in need of some upgrades because of BEPS, or they're already above the median, but they still want to improve their operations anyway, all buildings will be given, equal treatment by our account managers and engineers. So everyone is eligible. The advent of BEPS does not then say, oh, well, half of the buildings in DC are not eligible for our services.
Thanks. And then specifically to multifamily, though there may be some other sectors that run into similar issues. Often, I'm sure you're very familiar with one of our large barriers is that the residents in paying their bills we as landlords struggle to make the necessary certain investments, given that the residents may directly or indirectly be the ones to benefit through direct payment of their bills. Had you considered programs or had success getting programs in place to either get those incentives, either if the landlord is making the investment for the purchase on behalf of the resident, or getting residents familiar with the program so that they as renters can take it? And I'm thinking of things in unit, right? So LED lighting, efficient equipment, smart meters, thermostats, and things like that that are often maybe a challenge to justify that DCSU is able to help sort of close that gap.
Sure. Crystal, go ahead.
Yeah, so we do have incentives that are available for the individual energy ratepayer, like the efficiency products that Ted mentioned. And then, of course, we work with building managers and developers for like common areas, so we can provide support in that area. But also keep in mind, we have a very limited budget. And, like I tell the team, with every dollar we spend, we are trying to achieve multiple goals with that dollar that we're spending and the amount of the incentive level or the rebate level, because we have to achieve the energy savings. We have to definitely, spend a certain amount with the low income community, as well as achieving green jobs, et cetera. So we're constantly kind of moving dials up and down to make sure that with the funding that we have available, we're still able to achieve our targets. And we'd like Ideally, we'd like to get a little more sophisticated and fine-tuned, but of course, we would need more funding to achieve that kind of level of, you know, sophistication that I think is what you're talking about, Matt.
To an extent, yes, though I think what I'm also getting at is hopefully there are ways we can figure out to partner to get DCSEU in front of the bulk of residents, right, who would benefit, right? Is that more creative ways for the landlord to be the ones to pay for the upgrade up front, to figure out ways to pass through those savings to tenants, given that they may be the ones who need to install it, put it in their unit, and may be the ones to benefit from it on their monthly utility invoices going forward. Just to get to the scale, particularly that those are going to be some of the biggest barriers for some of our properties throughout the city in achieving BEPS compliance.
Right. And absolutely we can support that effort because that involves tenant participation, tenant education, and just letting them know what the end benefit is and how it benefits them. So we can absolutely support that.
Yeah, and are you talking about income qualified buildings or all multifamily buildings in general? Because we do have some great programs for our income qualified buildings where we're working closely with the landlords, getting some buy-in from them financially as well to help support more extensive energy efficiency retrofits within the multifamily properties. You know, much more extensive than we've been able to do in our earlier days.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I was speaking specific to sort of in our world is market rate and rent controlled properties, and so and understanding there's a sliding scale sort of what's the level of assistance provided based on that property sector.
Right, and I think you know this is kind of looking forward a little bit, but the Public Service Commission, of course, is in the process of adopting rules by which Pepco and Washington Gas will be able to start offering energy efficiency programs again here in the city. And by the terms of the Clean Energy Omnibus legislation, those programs are to be primarily focused on the low to moderate income buildings. Moderate income is not a market segment that we're serving currently. Or not serving very, very much. The moderate income has been designated to be up to 120% of area median income. So you will see some programs coming online probably in about a year or so that will help even in that's been difficult for us to serve. But Pepco, as I said, Pepco and Washington Gas will be coming online with some programs to supplement what we're doing here in the city.
I see that Michael has a question about our custom process. Michael, the way to engage with us is just to reach out and let us know that you are involved in a project, and I will pair you with one of our account managers depending on the vertical and the vertical market served, and we will work directly with the customer to scope out the work. That's the first conversation we want to have is like, what are you looking to achieve? What are you interested in doing? Do you have a budget, a timeline? And just kind of scope the project. If additional assistance is needed in scoping that project from a technical perspective or prioritizing like the measures you want to pursue, we will then get our engineer involved. Once our engineer is involved, they may ask additional questions. They will look for design plans, maybe do a site visit, and right now we're doing virtual visits with a photo, FaceTime, however, whatever access the customer has, and just kind of get all of the information that's needed to do a building analysis, and then we will, move forward with the discussion on what the potential is and the potential incentive level is for your particular project. And if you have to phase the project, and then we're willing to pay incentives based on like a phase 1 or phase 2 of the project, and we want to be like solutions oriented more than just let's just get this project done, pay out an incentive, but we want to be able to offer you a total solution to getting the project done. And if there is a cost share required from one of our programs, or if you need additional financing or what have you, that is when we will connect you with like DC PACE or DC Green Bank for financial mechanisms that will help complete a project. And so the account manager that is assigned to you will be with you from the start all the way through to the end of that project. And we will be with you on the next project and so on. So it really is about relationship management and bringing you a total solution.
Thank you, Crystal.
And Catherine, I just put our phone number in the chat, and Catherine, who is our project intake coordinator. So that's the easiest way to start if you have a question about, whether the custom program is best for you or maybe some of the other programs that we're offering. Catherine can break that down and understand your needs and describe which one of our programs might be best suited for your particular building.
Do we have any other questions from the group today? Okay, Crystal and Ted, I might offer a little homework for you guys because the task force can put forth like policy and program recommendations as an entity that might highlight, let's say, to the council or to other groups or something like that, the importance of a particular thing that you're working on. So maybe if there's, as you're going back and developing these programs, if you need some assistance from the task force, maybe, coming back to the task force and talking about a particular program and just need a little bit more buy-in to sell it or something like that, then maybe the task force could consider giving some input or something like that on programs that you were thinking about and how much they would impact the BEPS program and decide whether or not we want to put forth like a recommendation to endorse the program or something like that. That's certainly in the purview of the task force. So you guys might think about that and have some conversations and decide whether or not you ever want to come back to this group for that kind of input.
First, thank you for the time you've given us this afternoon, and thank you for giving us a little bit of homework. I'll do some of my homework a little bit early, and it's a shameless plug, but I'll put it in anyway. The city has been DOEE very, very good to us in terms of the way that they've helped us work through these programs and serve many, many buildings here in the city over the last decade or so. I see BEPS and the work that will be required with the new mandates significantly increasing the workload and the demand on our products and services. That clearly needs, in my view, to go hand in hand with a greater investment by the city in this program. Our budget has been flat now for about 7 years. And I think with this new work coming on board, and we want to make sure that we're able to support the city in a meaningful way. I know that times are tight and money is tight, but as we look out a couple of years or so, I think we should keep talking to each other, keep understanding what the demands are for the energy efficiency services and not only the technical support but the financial support as well, and make sure that we're balancing our investment in these programs appropriately. So I'll take that part of the homework. And Cliff, I see you looking interested, but Cliff understands this. I mean, when this program was started, the budget was very modest because I think, quite frankly, it was a bit of an experiment. We wanted to make sure that we didn't go and invest too much, not knowing, what some of the results might be. And but I think over the decade, we've proven that this is a winning formula. and that is providing significant benefits to the district and to the building stock here in the city, both at the commercial and the residential level. And so, but we still know that there are lots of buildings. There are probably 1,100 or so that will be required to report under the new BEPS requirements. And I would say our funding right now is helping us. Crystal, what would you say? Support maybe 100 or so buildings a year?
Yes, that's what we have,
So,
about that much. Yeah.
yeah. So there's a gap, just to be candid.
No, I think that's what needed to be talked about. Does anybody have any other thoughts or final comments before we move on to the next topic? Okay. Thank you, Crystal and Ted. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Very much. Again, our phone number's on there. I think Crystal's contact information is on there. Please feel free to reach out and contact us anytime, okay?
Yes.
We're here to help.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to Andrew, and he is going to give an update on Deep Energy Retrofit.
Hello, everyone. So we're going to go pretty quickly through this because I think a lot of the stuff we've covered before. There's a portion of the slide deck that I really want to get to you guys and get some input on. We've had some really great conversations with the universities and the hospitals, and so I think it's great for us to be able to go ahead and share that information with you guys and get input. So I'll quickly go over kind of the same stuff we've talked about before, but deep energy retrofits are a type of pathway that we've discussed and have agreed that is very in the best interest of BEPS to offering, especially as a pre-approved pathway, alternative compliance pathway, so buildings don't need to propose this pathway to have it selectable. It is open and available to buildings. And the design is to provide similar savings as multiple cycles of compliance. And it's really just following the same process as other pathways. It's selected at the same time as pathway selection. There are some different reporting, evaluation, enforcement requirements, but all in all, they still follow the same general structure of a normal pathway, or a principal pathway. We can go to the next slide. And so I'll start off by saying thank you to everyone who gave us name ideas for the pathways. I think we've landed at two that we like, but we are always open to more ideas. But we've kind of broken deep energy retrofits into two groups. There's the accelerated deep energy retrofit pathway, and there's the extended deep energy retrofit pathway. These are the early and long-term compliance ones we've talked about in the past, just rebranded, fresh coat of paint and whatever. So accelerated is, as it says, it's incentivized for early completion of projects, so savings are realized within the first compliance cycle. The savings targets are compounded savings targets over multiple cycles, so 36, 48, 59, something like that, for multiple cycles of compliance over time. This is open to any property type. Any property type can take this pathway and use it in the first compliance cycle. Extended is what we really want to talk about today and get to. This is designed for projects that are not going to be done in the first cycle. There's structural considerations that make it advantageous for certain property types to comply over multiple cycles with deeper savings. And so because these savings are being achieved long-term, we're not looking for compounded savings, we're looking for additive savings because there's delayed realized savings. So it'll be more than 20%, but we'll get into how we're determining what that saving threshold is in a little bit. And so our proposal is to have this open for the affordable housing, multifamily sector, the college, university, and hospital campuses. And let's get to the next slide. Cool. So this is reiterating what I pretty much just said about accelerated deep energy retrofits. Our current proposal or thinking is that you are granted waivers based on your achievement. If you achieve 36%, you get 2 cycles of achievement. That's for the BEPS cycle 1 and BEPS cycle 2. 49% is for SPEP cycle 2 and 3, and then 59 is for 2, 3, and 4. And then they're compounded. And then we added a requirement to maintain at least 75% of the savings at the end of the wave cycles, just to ensure that these are persistent, maintained savings over time. And we've covered this, so let's go to the next slide.
I wanted to make sure that nobody, because we won't come back to accelerated deep energy retrofit, I want to make sure that nobody has any questions about this particular pathway before we move on to extended.
One question. You say maintain 75% of savings. That's at the end of each cycle, right? So if you have a multi-cycle accelerated savings at the end of cycle 2, at the end of cycle 3, and the end of cycle 4, you have to maintain 75% savings. Is that correct?
I think how we currently have it written, it might only be for the second cycle they have to be maintained, but that's a good question. I think we also understand that, we're talking about 12, 18 years out in the future, and buildings tend to change in that time frame, and 75 might be something that needs to be discussed with the buildings on a case-by-case basis. So I'm not totally certain about what our current wording says on that, so let me get back to you on that, Cliff.
Thank you.
But also, I think the thing that is not said on this slide that we've been, we're working for is that a building that doesn't achieve 75% savings will have a chance to do corrective actions or have time to make sure they're back on track, because we realize that this is they've achieved their savings goal and hopefully it is maintained, but there's cases where there might be backsliding, and it doesn't automatically put you into an enforcement area if you are at 74% at the end of cycle 2. But yeah, let me get back to you on that, Cliff. Good question.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
So the idea is this is an official pathway. This isn't part of the alternative pathway. This is an official pathway.
Yes. So we're calling this a pre-approved alternative compliance pathway, which means this effectively just means when we release the rules and you look in the rules, you will not see this, but when you see in our guidance, this will be in our guidance. Doesn't change what the ability of a building is to select it. It's just we're considering an ACP that we have already documented out for building owners.
Cool. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, and all property types could choose this.
Yes.
So it's not restricted. Any other questions? Okay.
Okay. Extended deep energy retrofits. So this is a lot of text on the page. I'm going to try to summarize it in as best as I can. But this is, again, designed for projects that are not done with the first cycle, that cannot be done within the first cycle. There might be financing restrictions, or it might be more advantageous or beneficial for the building to align with something like a master plan. And so this will allow buildings in these sectors to target deep savings beyond the base or principal compliance pathways in exchange for additional time. But again, because these are delayed savings, we are asking for more than just compounded savings to make up for the fact that we are not realizing those savings at the end of cycle 1. To basically make sure that there is a reporting framework and accountability and guide rails, we're requiring a milestone plan to be developed, and this will be due at submission for selection of the pathway, and will become basically the basis for an ACP agreement between DOE and the campus or building. And then along the way, there will be milestone progress reports, which at least will be due at the end of each cycle between the beginning of the pathway and the end. So if you have a 2-cycle pathway, there's just one milestone report due. There might be more based on what is reflected in the submitted plan, but we sort of leave it up to the building owner to come up with the plan, and then it becomes a conversation between DOE and the building owner to develop the robust final agreement. And then, buildings that are not on track, campuses that are not on track will be removed from the pathway and may be subject to aggregated penalties at the time. We also, again, sort of acknowledge that this is a long-term pathway and things happen. And the reason why we want a milestone plan is to, A, have guide rails, but also to have an open dialogue between the building owner or campus with NDOE, and to make sure that if anything comes up along the way, any roadblocks, they can be addressed between the two parties, and we don't have to get to the point where a building has to be removed from the pathway. We can still ensure that they, get the resources they need, get the additional time, get the support they need to still meet the targets that they've set out for themselves. I'm gonna move on to the next slide, or do we want to take questions?
No, well, we can move on to the examples. I also wanted to acknowledge out loud that all of this information for the extended deep energy retrofit pathway has been vetted by the campus subcommittee. So we worked with the colleges and universities and the hospitals through the subcommittee to kind of create this framework, and they are basically helping propose this as recommendations, and they've all agreed to this framework.
Yes, and I'll just add to that a major thank you to anyone who participated in that subcommittee. They were immensely helpful with this, and also we said this multiple times throughout the subcommittee, and it's thrown out through the slides. We also did this with the affordable housing sector in mind, which we've also received a lot of input from the affordable housing stakeholders on the task force as well. So thank you to them as well. Okay, so savings and timeline. So the general framework is going to be, or that we're proposing here, is that the energy performance requirement, the percent reduction, will be equal to the savings expected by the end of the first compliance cycle, multiplied by the number of cycles the building owner requests. We're limiting this to 2 or 3 cycles, so that multiplication factor is only 2 or 3. And again, the savings must be demonstrated at the end of the final compliance cycle. We're also setting minimums and maximums. And we have examples that kind of spell this out a little bit better. So we'll move on to the next slide, which will have the actual savings numbers. But there's a minimum of 30 for 2 cycles, 40 for 3 cycles. There's a maximum we're setting that we will require. Doesn't mean that they can't achieve more than that. But of 40 for 2 cycles, sorry, there's a typo, and 60 for 3 cycles. And then interim milestones will be met based on what is proposed in the milestone plan. So let's go to the next slide, actually, which has some good examples on it. So we have 3 campuses here. We're going to do this all with campus examples. And so the first, campus A, has a expected savings by the end of the first cycle, a distance from a standard that we've expressed here in site energy. We've converted it back from source energy, of 16% reduction required. So that would be what they would achieve at the end of the first compliance cycle if they were following just the standard target pathway. Campus B is 9%, so they're a little bit closer to the standard. And Campus C is 20%. They are far enough away from the standard where the standard target pathway just doesn't work for them. They have to take the performance pathway. And so if all 3 of these campuses selected the 2-cycle extended deep energy retrofit target or pathway, their targets would be 32, 30, 40. So 16 times 2 is 32. That's how you get the first one. 30% comes from that minimum we referenced earlier. So if a building wants additional time but is close enough to the standard, we're asking that there's a minimum threshold be placed on their target, just so that we're still pushing the envelope in terms of energy reduction in the district, and that these buildings are still, achieving deep energy retrofit savings in addition for extended time. And then Campus C would only ever have to achieve a 40% because they're 20% or greater away from their standard. Doesn't mean they can't achieve 45%, doesn't mean they can't achieve 60%, and you might give them some additional savings or credit there, but we're only regulatory going to require 40% to consider them compliant. Then getting into the documentation requirements, it's going to be the same for all three of these campuses. There'll be a pathway selection form due February 1st, 2023. They'll need to, at the same time, propose their milestone plan, and this will again become the basis of a ACP agreement between DOE and each of the campuses, which will lay out what their actual reporting requirements are. They will at least have one milestone report due February 1st, 2027. They will have a final milestone report, which will look virtually the same as the milestone report, just hopefully every box is checked, which is due February 1st, 2032. That shows that they have implemented all the interim measures that they're supposed to, exhausted all their resources they needed to do in order to achieve their final savings target, which should be realized in their calendar year of 2031 benchmarking data, which is due April 1st, 2032. You can go to the next slide, which is the same example, just shown up over 3 cycles. Just to quickly walk through this, the savings targets, again, are calculated the same way. We're just multiplying by 3 this time. So 48% for Campus A, 40% for Campus B, because there's a 40% minimum, and then Campus C, maximum of 60%. Again, they can achieve more if they'd like. It's just what we're holding them to. And then in the documentation side of things, it again looks virtually the same. The difference is we've added a milestone report in there because there's 2 intervening cycles before the end of there's 3 compliance cycles we're looking at here. And then everything is due February 1st, 2038, and then savings are going to be reported February 1st, 2038, or April 1st, 2038. Let's pause there and see if we have any questions.
Yeah, and that's our last slide of what we're going to present, so we can just open it up for any questions, and I can always go back to a slide if folks want me to.
So just broadly speaking, curious if, just to be clear, this is specific as a defined pathway for campus and affordable housing, and I'd maybe pose the question to the task force or to DOE and say and ask if you considered the appropriateness of this for other property types that sort of meet similar or that would be subject to similar criteria or challenges to whom this would be appropriate to offer to them as well.
So I can respond broadly from our perspective, and then I'm very curious to see what the rest of the task force says. But we are definitely not opposed to this a random building, one-off building, case by case, applying for this through the pre-approved custom ACP process. In our research, we found that these 3 property types, these 3 sectors, had structural need for this as a pre-approved ACP, and that's why we're presenting it as such. But we're definitely not opposed to some building coming forward through the pre-approved ACP process and proposing this pathway as an option for themselves.
So obviously some buildings may have a really hard time complying, and so that's why you've created this extended pathway. Is there something that you're doing to encourage buildings to save that energy that they can as soon as they can, rather than just extending and allowing them to try and make really big savings near the end of cycle 2 or 3, depending on how long it's extended?
I got muted because I was typing. So I think one of the reasons why we are really excited about the idea of the milestone plan, the milestone progress report, is that this will provide, again, guide rails to making sure that buildings are on track to achieving that. And along the way, there might be major project milestones that must be met. So if you're installing a new CHP system on your campus, we hope to see what the actual installation process looks like reflected in the milestone plan so that we know they're on track. It might also include interim energy efficiency measures along the way. So if you know you're replacing your central boiler is going to get you, half of the way there, and you just want to make up a bunch of other smaller projects that might net the other half. Those will be reflected in the milestone plan and hopefully can be realized before the main project deadline is due. Hopefully that got to the crux of the question, Cliff, but let me know if I missed anything.
Well, I'd also like to add to that. I think if we have some structural financial issues where, let's say, affordable housing property or a campus can't get a certain type of financing to even do the EEM projects until year 10, then they're going to have to propose something in the meanwhile. Let's say improve their operations and maintenance, or look at a low cost, no cost list, of what can we address that has low or no cost in that interim until I can do those retrofit projects because of my financial constraints. There's definitely something's going to have to be proposed in the meanwhile, and we'll have like maybe a targeted list of some things that we could possibly give them to consider to do in the meanwhile, if that helps, Cliff.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was hoping for. Thanks.
Any other thoughts or questions on this particular pathway?
Yeah, I want to add to sort of Matt's question earlier about, other sectors that this might be appropriate for. I think that, like Andrew said, we're open if people want to propose it through like the custom ECP process, but I think that we would be looking, to ensure that there's good cause for someone to be able to do this, because this is sort of as we noted earlier, that the goal of this pathway is to really offer it to buildings that have sort of those structural or like really sort of far-reaching logistical issues that get in the way of them being able to comply with sort of the standard BEPS pathways. And so I think that we're open to it, but there definitely would need to be kind of good cause made by a building owner to say like why this might be appropriate. But open to hearing more if anyone feels like there's other sectors that we might be overlooking on this. And I think we'll learn a lot in the first compliance cycle as to sort of this, how this pathway is going and whether there are other building types for which this would be, we should sort of open this up to more.
Any other thoughts or questions? Okay, then we will move on. I'm going to turn it over to Katie for a moment to give us an update on the rules process.
Yep. So right now the rules are with the mayor's office. They're under review. And I don't have much more of a detailed update other than they are with the mayor's office and they are moving. So I just confirmed with our legislative director yesterday that they are moving through the approval process. So they aren't just sitting somewhere on someone's desk right now, but they are moving through the approval process. And that's about the extent of the overview, the update I can give. But
is that one of the last points of the process that we've been working through over the last couple months?
Yeah, it's getting close to the sort of the last quote unquote step. There's a lot of steps, but it's getting close to that. Yeah, so it's with the mayor's office under review and hopefully getting approved soon.
Yep, and once we get all of the approvals, then it takes us about a week to actually get it posted in the register, right? That's
yeah, from what I understand. Yeah.
Okay. And then we're planning, once we do get approvals and know that it's going to get posted, we'll send out an email to everyone.
Yeah, we will inform task force members for sure once they're out, and probably our industry partners And then to answer Set's question in the chat, yes, Set, we are still planning to have a 60-day comment period.
Yep, and after they're posted, we plan on having a couple of Q&A sessions on it to give. We're going to save at least one task force meeting just for a blanket open Q&A. And then we'll probably host at least one public meeting to also do Q&A that's not attached to a task force meeting. That's what we're working on, at least. I'd love to ask the task force a question. Is there anything else that we should be offering or doing during that time? If we do a public Q&A session, a task force Q&A session, and then email everybody to let them know. Do you guys have any questions about that or thoughts?
Sharon, this is Jay. It's very possible that some of the professional development organizations like AIA or American Energy Engineers or others might want specific presentations about this. I don't know if there could be something canned that maybe even task force members could present on behalf of the group. But that's something to think about creating and possibly offering to those organizations.
Okay. I think what we have to figure out is whether or not we're doing formal presentations or just opening it up for questions, like a Q&A session. I think while they're out for public comment, we'll have to see exactly what we're allowed to do. I can put it that way.
Good point.
And but that's a good idea. We'll double check on that. Does anyone have any other questions or thoughts about that update? Okay. Thoughts about, I wanted to have a little, maybe short conversation, we'll just see how it goes, about future agenda items, because we are running low on topics. I think we're kind of getting to the point where we don't necessarily have to have meetings every 2 weeks. It's one of the reasons we shifted around some of the meetings in November, and then our next meeting won't be until December 8th. So I wanted to kind of put a call out. We do have at least one meeting in December planned for a workforce development discussion. We have a partner that we've got through the American Cities Climate Challenge that's actually going to talk about workforce development, because everybody has expressed such concern about that, and we can see what we can do as a task force about that, maybe make some recommendations or something like that. If there's thoughts about any other policy gaps that don't have to do with the DOEE that BEPS is creating, that the task force might need to make recommendations on. I wanted to open the floor for a moment to see if anybody has any thoughts on future agenda items that we need to be considering. I know we'll have at least one meeting on the results of the cost-benefit study when it's finished. I don't think that's going to be until at least January, though. And we plan on, when the benchmarking rules go for public comment, then we will probably come to the task force and give you guys an update on those, because I know there's been a lot of conversations about a lot of questions about data verification. And then at some point we need to discuss like what's our long-term and short-term role of the task force, and decide, do we switch to once a month? Do we, what are some of the long-term things that we want to do? So I know I have those on my short list. Any other thoughts? Or maybe burning questions that folks have that we need to revisit a particular topic? Okay, well then I will take that as we've covered all of the topics that are on my short list, and that's probably a good list to move forward with. Any other final thoughts? Okay. So just a quick updates on webinars. There's actually a lot of stuff going on in the next couple of weeks. We're still hosting our live monthly webinar, but because it would normally be scheduled on Thanksgiving, we're not going to be doing it on Thanksgiving. We postponed it a little bit, and our last monthly webinar is scheduled for December 10th. Based on when the rules go out for public comment, that may either be a session with the DC Green Bank, or we may decide to change the topic and make it an open Q&A. We'll just have to see how our timeline works out in the next couple of weeks. We also may go ahead and start scheduling some monthly webinars from January on, at least for a couple more months, and see how our timeline works out. I wanted to point out the buildinginnovationhub.org/events website. I would suggest everybody maybe bookmark that page because they have a lot of sessions coming up over the next couple of months, including one that is tomorrow with AOBA. And Joe, one of our task force members, is actually going to be talking on that one. So shout out to Joe and good luck. So if you are interested in that particular event, go ahead and go to the buildinginnovationhub.org's website and go ahead and sign up today so you can join that tomorrow. And then we have our Green Building Professional Series that's happening every month for the next 6 months or so. We moved our BEPS webinar to the end for April 14th because our rules weren't out yet. But the first one is going to be December 9th. And talking about the new building codes. So if you're interested in that, I would definitely sign up for that particular session. So our next meeting is December 8th. We're going to skip next week because of Thanksgiving, and then we're just going to go back to our regular schedule, our previous schedule. So we're actually going to skip 2 weeks and go back to December 8th as our next meeting. And like I said, before, the agenda is up for discussion at the moment. It is either going to be a workforce development discussion or a Q&A on the rules, and we'll just kind of see how that goes. And if we can fit in any of our other topics that we just talked about, we might, depending on what's going on. Does anyone have any announcements?
I have a quick announcement. I was trying to wait to see if anybody else did. So I wanted to just throw this announcement out there. Our data verification services, we've been offering the no-cost data verification services this year since the summer, essentially. And that has continued into this fiscal year. As you all know, we work very tightly on fiscal years here. So that has continued into this fiscal year. However, we will not be offering sort of any data verifications past the end of the calendar year. So we are asking all interested parties that would like to get a free data verification from DOEE to submit their applications by this Friday, November 20th. So after November 20th, we will not be accepting any more new applications because we will be spending December wrapping up any of the outstanding work that we already have on our plate. So I just wanted to throw it out there. We did send out a small email blast to a lot of the folks that had shown interest in the program earlier this week to let them know that the application process is closing down at the end of the week. But I just wanted to put it out here on the call too that if you know anyone that is interested in getting a free data verification, they should submit that application by November 20th.
Thank you, Katie. Does anyone have any questions on that for Katie?
I have one quick announcement. IMT is hiring for 3 positions, including a position of Associate Director of Outreach and Engagement for the Building Innovation Hub. So if anybody knows someone who would be good for that, imt.org. Thank you.
Thanks, Cliff. Does anyone have any other announcements? Okay, if not, then we will call the meeting at a close. Thank you, everyone, for participating today. Appreciate it.